Named after my grandson. They were a big debate about that. Where is he?
Yes. I actually.
Like, just like
Town of Sylva. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. There's a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion, any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. All opposed by like sign. Motion carries. Next is to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, have a motion, we have any discussion? No discussion, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. All opposed by like sign, motion carries. Next on the agenda is public comments. And I believe we have one person signed up for public comments. Demarcus? Demarcus.
Yep, yes, sir.
Welcome to the town of Sylva board.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'm honored to stand in front of y'all today. I just wanted to talk with you all. Hey, Bryson, how you doing? Good. And I wanted just to have a conversation, inform you about the nonprofit I started here in Sylva last year. We're called Reflection of Inspiration. We're located right above the farmhouse here, and our mission is we help individuals and organizations achieve their goals and aspirations to be better for within their families and within their communities by providing educational programs and other aspects for resources for them. So I just want to introduce us, and we had a wonderful conversation with Dogwood Health Trust at the library here probably about a week and a half ago. And we brought a lot of executive directors from the surrounding areas. We have several nonprofits here, and we just had some good dialogue. And we talked about some of our needs and some of the things that we could take care of for the community and how we could be more proactive in serving the clients and members that are a part of our nonprofits. And as you're aware, the same issue has come up in regards to housing and transportation. And I think I just want to build some dialogue with this body as well as the county commissioners to see, where is the land? Where can we come together and work together and accomplish our goals? And see where y'all can benefit in helping us and see where we can benefit helping you all out as well. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I've been here since 2003. So this is home, and we got some brochures if you can pass this down. We put on several different trainings. We have an annual event each year in regards to, so one of our first programs that we do is domestic violence and sexual assault program. We partner with the Department of Justice, and we help their grantees from financial training, compliance, shelters, domestic pieces. We work with them as well up here on the hill there. And we work with all different programs here. And by being a part of this work, the common word that that's been popping up, that I've been talking with a lot of people, is connection. We all got to connect. We all got a goal to achieve. So when we connect, we can help each other out. So I just wanted to present to y'all today. So
Thank you very much.
all right, thank you.
Okay, so I think that covers just general public comments. Everyone else is here to speak about either Bryson Park or the solicitation. So, moving on down the agenda, first thing is our reports, and I guess the mayor's report comes first. I would like to express a thank you on behalf of the town of Sylva and me personally for Richard Hicks and his service to the town of Sylva. He's been more than just a manager, he's been a friend. And we're very lucky to have somebody that's mountain folks come be with us during Paige's absence. And I'm very, very grateful for your service, and we hope you come back and see us. In conjunction with talking about the streetlights, it's been brought to my attention that there are streetlights that go along with these on top of the mass arms that hold up the red lights on Main Street. I have approached DOT about trying to find some funding to paint those lights black to match the new poles. Have not been successful at that. There's not a pot of money to get that from right now. Depending on when the timing is for those to be installed, we may wind up having to paint those mass arms ourselves. But I've still not given up on trying to find some funding through DOT to pay for them somehow. But we would definitely, I think, want them to match our new light bulbs. And of course, every option is lights. And in so I have met with DOT on a different issue about our 107 project. And there's a great deal of property that's being held up past where the right of way is that they want to achieve for the properties, and everything behind that, they're calling the temporary construction easement. So we've got a couple of businesses that would like to build back in the new location now. Or as soon as possible. So in meeting with DOT, they emailed the construction unit in Raleigh and did get permission that we do not have to wait until the end of the project. When the project starts in isolated places, they will release a construction easement back to the landowner so that we can start building buildings and get it back on the tax. So that's a one step forward there. And I sit on to Mr. Mayor.
Sure. I have just two things tonight. First, I just wondered if maybe in our next report, manager's report, if we could get an update on the cat sculpture that was going to take place in 2022 at the Bridge Park. Just whatever happened with that, is that still a possibility, or is that off the books? Just an update would be great. And then I've heard a little bit of chatter around town about Jackson paper pollution. Again, it comes up from time to time, and I just want to remind everybody there's an excellent article in the Sylva Herald that Jim Buchanan wrote in July of 2023 addressing this issue, and it's an excellent read. I hope everyone will take a moment to read that is concerned about the pollution. Jason Gregory has works at Jackson Paper. He's got several generations that have moved to Jackson Paper. He's wrote a really thorough book on the issue. So if this is a concern to anyone out there, please take it and read it. Just to clear up any misunderstandings, the boiler stack is emitting, it's a water release, it's a steam, it's not smoke. And it's a recycled paper mill that is very environmentally friendly. And I want to make sure that that's portrayed to our community. And again, it's very helpful to clear up any miscommunication. Thanks.
Right. Yeah, I just have one thing to report, and it's really just a conversation I had earlier this week with Tiffany Henry with the Jackson County Economic Development. And it kind of relates to something Mary was saying about misinformation. I like and Byron, I'm Mitch talking to you about this now. I think we would really benefit a lot from beefing up the section on the town's website about the 107 project with, for example, an FAQ section or something, because there is a lot of widespread misinformation about the project that I hear nearly daily myself. So just a suggestion, kind of getting that out there for anybody that would like to participate in helping with getting some better information circulated about what the project is and how it works, and maybe try to dispel some of those misconceptions.
I think it's a great idea.
Well, I have nothing to report tonight, but I would like to take just a moment and thank Richard for being a very big inspiration to myself. He's helped me through a lot of things that I didn't understand, and being a new board member, I really appreciate what he did. I do take his absence, and I'd just like to say thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. And I'd also like to welcome Paige back.
Thank you.
For her time. I hope the baby's doing well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to say it was sad to see the Speedy buildings go away, and also the Bryson Farm Supply building. Hopefully Speedies will relocate somewhere soon. It's just crazy to see our town start to dwindle down. That's all I have.
All right, good evening. I don't have much of a report this evening, but I did have two things that I wanted to see if I could possibly get the consensus of the board to get on a future agenda. Is that okay if I go ahead and hear that now? Okay. The first one, prior to our new board members and mayor taking their seats, Marie Cochran and Faustine McDonald came to us on September 28th. And we kind of all together kind of gave them the okay or the agreement for them to move forward with an art project that they're working on, not an art project, sorry, a sculpture that they're working on. Marie reached out to me and I was hoping that we could get them on the second meeting of February. So that's going to be February 22nd to see if we can get them on the agenda again. They need a official endorsement and a memorandum of understanding in order to communicate with that the sculpture artist, just to let them know that we are serious about moving forward with that project. So if I could get the consensus, I guess, of the board to add that to the February 22nd meeting.
And
Natalie, if you could get the documentation to us
Yes.
prior to that.
Okay. And then the other item that I had, since we are talking about ordinances tonight, I wanted to see if we could move, and I don't really have a meeting preference for this, but see if we could get the consensus of the board to discuss our ordinance on receiving a permit to protest, since that is something that's unconstitutional and we can't actually enforce it. I think it would be nice for us to review whether we'd be able to take that wording out that doesn't require people to get a permit to protest, my apologies. So I don't know if we're able to set a date today, but at least be able to get the consensus of the board to look at that.
Just get the consensus. on the board.
Is everybody okay with that, or?
Yes.
it's fine.
And that is all I have today. Thank you.
All right, so now we are down to our manager's report.
Okay, just a couple of things for you. You are all scheduled for the essentials. Thursday, it's it'll be next Thursday and Friday. I think you're supposed to meet here at 7. The wall. Over there. It's an excellent class if you've never been. I think you'll learn a lot. But I hope you'll be sitting there on both days thinking, well, that's the same thing Amanda taught. But I think you will enjoy the class and it should be good. Next item, the fire department still has several burns they'll be doing in the next couple of weeks. Fire, that may be what it is. We're still short 2 officers. Not a lot of applicants, looking at this particular time, so hopefully we'll find some soon, but it's not very positive looking right now. The town hall will be closed Monday, February 19th for the President's Day holidays. So if you note that. And finally, you have all been invited to attend the American Legion Post 104 breakfast and 4 chaplain service and a plaque dedication. And that is on Saturday, February 17th. And the breakfast starts at 9 and the service and the plaque dedication starts at 10:30, and it will be at their meeting hall at 915 West Main Street. And again, that's Saturday, February 17th. They'll feed you and should be a nice day. And that's all I have there.
Thank you, Richard.
Just a quick question. So the town is closed on the 19th. Does that mean trash and recycling? Thank you.
So next on our agenda is to open the public hearing for community input, Bryson Park playground equipment. And I believe Jake has a presentation to start that off.
Good evening. Hannah's gonna get the presentation up here. Board members, a lot of you guys will have already seen a lot of this, but since the public hearing, we got people here that are interested in what's plan is at Bryson Park, take input. Figured we'd do a lot of this stuff again and go into a little bit more detail about the plan than we did. Right here's the first concept. Currently, there's kind of three existing areas where the old equipment was. We figured we'd make the best use of that space. And this is a zoomed out view right here. That's the same. This is a younger children's area right here. And I'll point out right off the bat that this concept shows it with mulch. We very likely will be going with the poured in place rubber. I've requested a new updated concept from a company and they haven't gotten me that yet, but as soon as we do, y'all be able to see that too. So that playground structure is for kids from toddlers up through about 5 years old. And there will be a different playground structure for slightly older kids, as well in the plan. Whirl and twirl and cruiser, you can see that right here. This fella that spins around, and there's a modified seesaw, a safer seesaw. You can't rocket your buddy off that seesaw, but you still can have fun on it. And the spring riders, those are something you don't see a whole lot anymore, and I think it's kind of a call back to older days on the playgrounds. I think it's neat. Spinners and seats, and something you don't see a lot, but you're starting to see in larger cities are chimes and conga drums. It's a sensory percussion type deal. Kiddos can bang on that stuff and make music. And another consideration is the folks that live in that neighborhood may not love that. So that's something worth thinking about. And we're just going to go into a little bit of detail about each one of these things. That's your pretty standard spinner, but again, instead of galvanized metal railings, you've got molded plastic, so you can stay on it a little bit better. You turn that red disc up top, and that's what spins it around. These two climbing towers right here, this one twirls around, and that's like a Kevlar fiber rope. It's got a 30-40 year life expectancy. Same down here. So you've got, and I want to add soft poured in place rubber down here rather than mulch for them to fall on, because somebody's definitely going to fall on that. But this is all approved by there's a whole agency that's dedicated to playground safety, and this stuff is checked out by that organization. So the second playground structure, let's go back to this one right here. That's the one I mentioned earlier. It's for kids 5 to 12-ish. So you're going to have a wide range of stuff that the older kids and the younger kids can enjoy as well. You've got swings here. Rather than just your standard swings, we're going to do some accessible stuff for differently abled children. We want as many people to be able to use this as possible. Another reason I like the poured in place rubbers, it's wheelchair and walker friendly, much more so than wood fiber or mulch. We'll have poured in place rubber walkways between each one of these sections. That's just come from discussions that I've had with the contractor thus far. And that will also eliminate the need for these internal borders right here. So we'll have a main border with accessibility ramps coming into the poured in place rubber. These right here will be able to go away, and we'll have continuity between the different areas of the playground, and it will also be completely accessible for all different physical abilities. Here's a picture. This is not exactly, the sky's the limit with color choices on the poured in place rubber. We can select about whatever we'd like. My suggestion would be an earth tone or something that looks sort of like dirt or mulch, because the sun's going to fade it and stuff like that. It's going to get dirty. I can see, somebody tracking mud across that and being an issue. So I'd like more of an earth tone type color for that. And that's kind of the end of the conceptual presentation. I've got questions. One thing I do want to address straight off the top is park in its current state is not ADA accessible hardly at all. It's not very safe. I think the primary objective of this entire project needs to be make that park usable for as many different people as we can, young through old. You've mentioned an outdoor kitchen area in the pavilion and stuff like that. I think that'd be a fantastic idea. And we're in a fortunate place with the funding so that some of those goals can be realized. Are there any questions before we turn it over to the public? Go ahead, Mark.
Jake, one thing, can you go back to that one?
Mm-hmm.
The canopy that's over the slide, is that gonna be canvas or is it gonna be plastic or? is it
It's
gonna be
not
something-
canvas or plastic. You see it a lot in sunshades and public
Like a
areas. I can't remember right off the top of my head what the actual fabric is called, but I can get that information.
So it's something that's not gonna be ripped off every time.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Hard winds. Okay.
Is the ground covering like a mat or like a mulch?
It's basically poured like concrete. It's an aggregate recycled rubber. And they basically form it up just like you would concrete, then it goes in and it's temperature cured, along like concrete. So once it's there to stay, and you can patch it. And the company that we get it from, we're pricing it through several different places, will show us how to patch it, stuff like that.
So, we talked one time about maybe extending the covered picnic area out, and making it a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm assuming that the play area from there closest to the shaded setting place for mothers to be in would be for the smallest of children and get
Yeah,
further
yeah.
down the line, the older they get.
Yeah, it does. And it's also not outside the realm of possibility to add other shade structures at other locations through the park too. We don't have that on this particular concept, but this is just an early kind of a foundation kickoff point for discussions. Any additional questions?
What's the timeline? We have one.
I think it's pretty realistic to have it completed, both the playground itself and the picnic shelter by late summer. Yeah, I do want to go over these survey results as well. So the town put out a survey. Paige had an intern that built this for us. We had 233 responses. This is just these first couple of pages. To show, who took the survey, have, 159 people that have been to the park before, 71 people that hadn't. This one kind of surprised me. 70 people that live inside city limits took the survey, and 110 live outside the city limits, and 50 from surrounding towns. So I think what that tells me is that this is not just a town of Sylva park when we complete it. It'll be for citizens of the county and surrounding areas as well. So one thing, people wanted to see equipment for toddlers and preschoolers. That's pretty standard and expected across a wide age range of children. Fitness equipment was not very highly requested in this survey. You can see there in the blue, that was the least important. And then lounging areas, hammocks, comfortable chairs, etc., and a free library was less important to people. The basketball court is going to be resurfaced, and it will stay where it currently is. Folks would like to see a walking path or a small track. And I think due to just the restrictions of the area where it's kind of long and narrow, it might kind of be cigar shaped, but nothing's impossible.
Sounds like a pretty famous, though.
Yeah, I think that will be, and it'll be nice, nice low cut grass, anything that isn't, place road. Go to the next page, Amanda, or is that the whole thing? Okay. Any questions about the survey?
I don't think the survey, we did, we looked at it and did his survey, and I don't think it addressed fencing.
Right. So as I was actually out there with a rep from Asheville Fence yesterday for quite a bit yesterday morning. Of course, the existing fencing will be replaced. What we'd like to do is fence it from the picnic pavilion down Chipper Curve Road, all the way back up to Allen Street, where we've got brand new chain link as part of that project. And then bring it back around the new retaining wall so that we can, and with several gates, of course, we can get through, but, yeah, that we will not only replace the existing fence, but very likely fence the entire park.
But it's been mentioned to me that because it's so narrow, we're chasing a ball and go further than they mean to go at times. Could the fencing along Chipper Curve Road be that rubber coated fence?
Yeah, I think it should be. I was talking to Mark about that before. I mean, not only can it be, it should be.
Okay.
Additional questions? I'll hand it over to the public.
All right, thank you very much. We have two people trying to speak about Bryson Park. Carl Lau.
Where? Well, he pretty much, was a pleasure to be here, Mr. Mayor, and he pretty much covered everything I had wrote down over here. And except for the basketball court, I had a pretty interesting idea about the basketball court, kind of pretty much, if it was possible and within the budget, to turn it into a multiple court, where you could, actually transition it to pickleball, tennis. I know it had to have a higher fence around for tennis, but, basketball and volleyball. And, I know he said y'all was gonna resurface the court, but it would be good if it could be something like that, if it was possible.
Rick and I talked about volleyball maybe, possibly. And then brought to my attention that it's real hard to get those to stay in place. They get tore up and they get gone and the wind gets them and, well, you know, it's just hard to keep one in place. It is something we've talked about and I don't think we gave up on it, but there's some issues with the volleyball. It might be that there's enough room to do a sand pit with a volleyball net, it would be much safer to play volleyball on asphalt as well. So we might look into that. The pickleball thing is.
Very popular thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an easy one. That's mostly just paint. OT as well.
Okay, so that's doable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And on the pavilion, I know you said you was gonna extend the pavilion and make it bigger. If it was possible, like say for instance, somebody like me, I use Bryson Park. I've been using Bryson Park since 2000. When I retired from the Army, we came back here and started a unity party. And we've been using Bryson Park since 2002 up until about 2016. And it got bigger and bigger every year. And just as to get the community together once a year, like usually it'd be around the 4th of July. And it got so big, it came to like 300 or 400 people up there. And plus, I'm kind of partial to Bryson Park because when I was a little boy, we used to take care of that park up. But my grandfather had a contract with Sylva to take care of that park up there. And we used to have to go up there and maintain cutting the banks, cutting the grass, everything. And in return, the only thing he got out of that was free water from the city. And so it's been Bryson Park somewhat down the line. I know it was probably named after most of the Brysons there, but my grandfather, old Bryson, actually did more for that park than anybody. And so it's been kind of partial to my family, and we have a lot of functions up there at that park. And due to COVID, due to other issues, we hadn't used it since. And people look forward to that every year coming back and it's open to the public. It's not like a family reunion or anything like that, but, we really enjoy it up there. And in the pavilion, if it was possible, like even if you had stuff for pickleball, equipment and stuff, volleyball net, things of that sort. If in the process of building the pavilion, if you can make a room big enough to store stuff. And actually, when you rented the park up there, you could basically sign for it here or whatever. And if there was a difference in the charge of using that equipment, then we just sign for it.
You talking about like extra tables and chairs?
Chairs and tables, volleyball nets, pickleball paddles, nets, etc.
That's a good idea. That's that double?
It's certainly worth exploring for sure.
And I did a little bit of research on some elaborate playground equipment. I know I've seen what Jake put up there, and that's just awesome. And I got some pictures of some stuff to where it would just about take up that whole area up there, and it's got like 60 different entities that you can do on there as a kid from early walking up until 12 years old. And it's one big complex. It's got like 60 different things that you can do on that piece of equipment. Now, it's a little expensive because they go anywhere from 40,000 up to 200K. But they're just amazing. Jake, that stuff that you had on there was just beautiful. I would show you these pictures, but since he's already got it pretty much laid out and planned, that's no concern.
I don't think anything's wrong with stone. You can share those pictures, Jake. I would like to.
All right, that's all I got. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time, Doc. Okay, we have one other person signed up to speak about Bryson Park. I'm having an awful trouble reading.
It's
your name.
okay.
So
Good
can you tell us
evening.
your name?
I was in a hurry. I'm sorry.
Mayor, I just want to clarify, you have 3 minutes during the public hearing to talk, and when the timer goes off, that's the end of the time.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Dr. LaShonda Edie. I'm the former president of the Jackson County NAACP chapter. And I'm actually speaking on behalf of Eleanor Bryson Forney, who wanted to be here tonight but could not. And so I'm here on her behalf. And she wanted everybody to know that, to really think about the history of the park and why it was started. And so that's why it's important to know that her maiden name is Bryson, because her grandmother, Grace Bryson, is the namesake of that park. And so back whenever the park was started, I think whomever was the manager of the plant here sold it to her grandmother, to Grace Bryson, for $1, because there was a need for Blacks to have a park here in this community. And the reason that it was named and given in her honor, because Grace, along with, I can't remember the other person's name, but Grace Bryson, along with one other gentleman, were advocates here in the community for the Black community at that time. And so Eleanor Bryson Forney wanted, first and foremost, for that to be clear, what the original purpose of that park was. And so with that being said, fast forward to now, it's really great, and I think they see in the other original, members of that area, which from my understanding, maybe only 2 or 3 families are still there that were there when the park was founded. But they're grateful for the attention that it's getting and for the dollars that are being put towards it. However, they also feel like a lot of things that have even occurred up to this point kind of flies in the face of the original intent of it. For example, the equipment that's currently there was transplanted from another park locally, right? Am I right? I don't know if somebody can confirm that or not, but.
That's correct.
Okay, and so basically, just that in and of itself really flies in the face of the original intent of the park, because if it wasn't good enough for Watson, then it shouldn't have even be put in Bryson Park. And I think the reason that it was moved because it had lead paint on it. So I don't think that's maybe the intent, of putting it there. Like, it was just like, oh, that'd be nice to put it there. But actions speak louder than words. And so for the leftovers from Mark Watson to be put there in this part that has that history really means that maybe perhaps a lot hasn't changed since it was needed back then. And so she really wanted to hone in on that fact. And speaking from personal experience, even though I'm not a local, my background is in communications. And so I have my doctorate in mass communications. So I know a lot about it and a lot about research. I'm a social scientist. So I was very appreciative to see the data. However, I think it's telling also, like you all pointed out, how many people are using the park and responded that don't live here. That's also telling to me that those who are originally there in that community are also not a part of that feedback. And so I know my time is up, but she sent pictures. I don't know how to share them. But my last thing would be to say, if nothing else, I think that you all owe it to Grace Bryson and to the plant manager that sold it for $1 to at least explicitly ask the remaining Brysons who are there what they would like to see in that park. And yes, it will be nice if it can also include what the other people have said. But at the end of the day, it's not remaining true to its original founding by excluding them from that process. And yes, they could have taken the survey, but it's only a handful. So you also could literally go ask them, what do you want to see in that park that was founded in your grandmother's name? And so I think it's great. And if you need more information about some ways to do that easily, my email is lashondaedie@icloud.com, and I'm happy to help. But I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I went over time.
Okay, so unless something's escaping me, that's everybody that signed up to speak about Bryson Park. So I would entertain a motion that we close the public hearing for Bryson Park.
That motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. All opposed, by like sign, the motion carries. And that public hearing is now closed. Now, the next thing on the agenda is the ordinance amendment, for solicitation. And I would, open the floor for, public to speak about solicitation. So, first person to speak signed up is Mr. Kenyon Tweet.
Ready? Good evening, my name is Kenyon Tweet. I am a relatively new resident of Sylva. My family's been here for a long time, but a few weeks ago when I noticed that there was an ordinance proposed dealing with the issue of panhandling, I thought I immediately reached out to Mr. Waldrop and Mr. Phillips, Mayor Phillips, and later got to speak to Ms. Newman. Just based on my past experience. Over the last, I guess it's been almost 50 years, I'm 58, I have been involved in working with homeless, street people, mental illnesses, addicts, and transients. And it's very easy for us to group them all under one heading, but I would caution everyone to remember that in many cases, those issues are independent of each other. In addition to that, we deal with the issue of people living below the poverty line. And I know we're dealing with all that here in Sylva. I wanted to speak and to show my support based on my experience for some sort of ordinance or effort by the city to curtail either, like I said, either through an ordinance or through other efforts to curtail panhandling on our streets and in public right-of-ways and in shopping centers. That being said, as a person of faith, as a member of the community, and I believe that the
the homeless and the street people and the addicts are part of our community. We are called to be good stewards and to be compassionate. But at the same time, while I feel we need to address this issue of open panhandling, that we need to provide alternatives, or at least consider alternatives for these people. And I could ramble on all evening about this, and I'm, happy to meet later and discuss these issues. I don't know if you have a task force looking into this, but look at the issue and if an alternative is provided, such as Jackson Neighbors in Need, United Christian Ministries, Mountain Projects. I know Jackson County has a number of great organizations. If alternatives and assistance are provided and the individuals refuse them, then how do you address that? Everybody I've worked with, every organization I've worked with has made it clear that the last thing you need to do in this situation is give these individuals cash. And for me, that's what panhandling is. Handing them cash is only going to create more problems. Direct them to an appropriate agency and get the help they need. And I'll stop there, but I'm happy to talk to people afterwards.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next is, Beatrice.
Good evening, everybody. Some of y'all I know, some of you I don't. My name is Destry Leger. I've got a lot of points to cover, so I'm going to talk pretty fast here. Happy to elaborate more later. My name is Destry Leger. I have been a resident of the town of Sylva for going on 9 years now. The entire time that I have lived here, I have worked with, in some form or fashion, the population of folks who fall under the federal homeless statutes. So whether that is people who are victims of domestic violence, people who are living unsheltered, or people who are living in a sheltered situation. There's other things that fall under those guidelines, but those are who I have worked with. I have spent more time with people who are living unsheltered, as they do like to be called. They're not street people, they're people who are living unsheltered, than I have with people of considerable means. I think that's a good way to live, and I'm pretty proud to say that I've done that. So that's to say, I also have a wealth of background coming and talking about this topic. My concern with the ordinance presented specifically is the ambiguity of it and the way that it would be enforced. We've already heard today that the police force is down by officers. The police force is the same folks who are supposed to monitor our traffic, handle our break-ins, handle people who are dealing with overdoses of a variety of things, right? So adding one more ordinance that doesn't seem like it is actually going to address the problem. I believe it's just adding on to the pile of work that police are already responsible for doing. They're police agencies, they're not a social service agency. We can't rely on them to address every issue. So going back to the ambiguity point of this, doing things like defining soliciting as using the use of printed word, and then later on saying that it can't be used during nighttime hours or to dusk and dawn. So are we saying you can't have a sign between dusk and dawn asking for something for you or others, is as it reads. So does that mean that nonprofits are not allowed to ask for solicit contributions after dark? There are a number of ways that we can keep going on, and there are just holes in this as it is written. And I think that, and even the fact that there are things in here that are already law, such as lying about disability status when soliciting, those are already things that the police are responsible for enforcing. So adding on to that, I don't think it is going to address the issue. I get the issue here is that we don't want to look at the homeless population. It reminds us of our failures as a society, the people who have fallen through the cracks, the way that our systems do not help everybody that we are here to serve. And yes, we absolutely should address that. My understanding was that this ordinance was based off of ordinance from Asheville, and if I have that incorrect, then I'm sorry. But based off of, if we're gonna look to Asheville, which as a good homeless advocate, I would say that there is a very different way in addressing rural homelessness than urban homelessness. And those things need to be taken into consideration when we talk about how we're going to apply policy from an urban area to a rural area. But that being said, you can look in the Mountain Express just last week where, and I hear you that I'm done. The first thing that it says is that after years of false steps, it seems the city of Asheville and Buncombe County are on the same page about addressing homelessness. They've agreed that a low barrier shelter is the top priority. Every community that have any need of unsheltered homelessness certainly has a any amount of unsheltered homelessness certainly needs a low barrier shelter. A low barrier shelter is key for people who are unhoused. They spent $75,000 to bring a national homeless expert to come in and run this survey to tell them that we need a low barrier shelter. We know that we need a low barrier shelter. I am the founding president of here in Jackson County, who is the county's homeless service provider, working with the unsheltered population. And that was the reason that we were founded. And we originally had incredible county support when we did it. I can give you guys newspaper articles that we were funded with the intention that we were going to build a brick and mortar low barrier shelter to address the issue. So my point being is that we have manners of addressing this, and I encourage this board to look at the things that will actually address the issue versus things that will not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's no one else signed up to speak on the solicitation ordinance, is that correct? Anybody else interested in speaking about that? Okay. So I would entertain a motion that we close the public hearing for the solicitation.
I had a contact from a local resident, and it's just a short message. I believe he sent this to the entire board, but he did reach out and ask that I read this. So before we close it, can I? Garrett Craig, he's spoken to us before.
Yes.
So if I can read that really quick, sorry. It'll be less than 3 minutes, don't worry. I'm trying to find it, y'all. I had it pulled up and then I went off. Okay, cool. So this is from a citizen of Sylva. It says, my name is Garrett Craig and I'm a homeowner in downtown Sylva. My family routinely navigates the town on foot. And with 2 elementary age children, I want to share that we feel safe shopping, banking, eating, and minding our own business. Despite hyperbolic scenarios and inflated personal anecdotes that have fueled some members' desire for order, I do not feel that the current state of panhandling poses a threat to our way of life. And ultimately, the proposed ordinance is a poor reflection of our community's priorities. Rather than punitive measures that stir emotions and generate headlines, we should spend our limited time and energy addressing root causes like a lack of affordable housing and job opportunities. Invest in social programs and local nonprofits that demonstrate our love and humanity. First Amendment concerns aside, maybe panhandling ordinances can make poverty less visible, but they can't erase it. In fact, they may cause even more hopelessness and despair. I ask this board to prioritize solutions grounded in respect and dignity. Thank you for your time. And to be clear, I read this for the first time. I didn't look at this before the meeting. So it's no reflection of what I agree or disagree with, but I did want to share the words from that community citizen who reached out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comment? So I entertain a motion that we close the public hearing on the solicitation.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion. All in favor, raise your hand, and say aye. Aye. All opposed by like sign, and motion carries. So now we move on to new business. First item on new business is to the solicitation ordinance. So we entertain a motion that we approve the ordinance as written.
I'll make that motion.
We have any discussion?
Yeah, I don't believe the ordinance is written as it's constitutional. One of the first barriers that a law has to pass is that it is not when it comes to First Amendment, it is not content based. And what that means is, for anyone that hasn't learned about this, because I only recently did myself, is that you cannot be restricting someone's speech based on what they're saying. And when I read this ordinance, that's pretty much precisely what it's doing. It's saying you can't say these things in these locations. When in fact, if it were law now, you would be saying effectively that any one of us can stand within 20 feet of an ATM and say anything we want, or 20 feet of a business that's open with people in line to go into an establishment. Any one of us or any other city could say anything they wanted. It just couldn't say, can I have some money? And I believe that that is a content-based restriction of someone's speech as that applies to the First Amendment. So I do not believe that the ordinance as written is constitutional.
Anyone else have any comment?
I had just a little bit of concern on section C about related activities prohibited. Only in the sense that it's impossible to discern and we're not called to be the judges. And so I know that there's North Carolina general statutes supporting 1, 2, and 3. And I know that T. Patton and his group worked on this. Could you talk on that a little bit or give me some sense of peace as to why that's included or not?
This ordinance, as it's written, is a civil. So basically what it would do is, there are general statutes that cover some of that stuff, but it would give our officers that choice of whether it's just a civil fine and that's it, which is dollars here, or is it a misdemeanor, which requires a court date or more, what I mean? Whatever chosen.
That's saying no.
Yeah.
And then one other comment I wanted to say is in regards to the penalty, I had some people reach out to me about a fine. What are you going to do to a fine to someone that doesn't have money already? And I want to be clear that in this paragraph, it also speaks to being able to speak to Patton or to manager Paige Dowling about the issue. And, that's not saying that they're going to be fined. It's saying that or, and there's a multitude of nonprofit organizations that I feel like folks in a situation can go to and have that liaison or that conversation in lieu of a fine. And I expect, if we pass this, that both of you will be reasonable in helping them get the resources they need. And this could help with a communication dialogue, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
Which is not a bad thing. When I was reading over Buncombe County's ordinance, I've sat on this board for a while and we have put ordinances out there that we haven't necessarily all agreed upon. But we put something out there and it has room to edit, it has room to change, it has room to grow or take away from. And so even if this is not perfect tonight, I think if we were to pass it, we can edit it and we can learn from it and we can fix it in the future.
I totally agree with you. And a side note to this is I've also had a conversation with Chief Haddon about that we don't want this to be a stunning thing to people who do not have a home, are not able to watch the news and see that there's a new ordinance. So I'd like for the first 30 days to be warnings only and informational status to the folks that are out there in this situation.
And I think we're all addressing this, that anyone has the right to freedom of speech. We don't want to touch anyone's First Amendment rights. What we are trying to address is more of an aggressive nature.
Right.
Am I right?
That's not how I read it.
Okay.
It's saying that you can't do certain things in certain places. It mentions aggressive behavior, but there's plenty of things in that ordinance as written that do not contain aggressive behavior. And I personally believe that you're trying to, if there's specific behavior that we want to curtail, then we should consider ordinances that address that specific behavior. Whereas saying that someone can't basically say, I need money in certain locations, I believe that is a content-based restriction of speech. Because just saying me to you or anyone else that you need money is not a public safety risk, in my opinion. Now, we can all draw lines between and I'll probably have different opinions about what we believe people tend to do after they've made that statement. But until someone has done something that poses a safety risk, I don't believe that there should be an ordinance addressing their behavior. That because someone panhandles, to me, doesn't represent a safety risk. I understand, that other things happen and sometimes accompany that behavior, but at face value, standing on the street saying I need money is not criminal. In my opinion, it should not be criminalized. And that's what this says, is that it is. It says if you're in certain places, you can't do that. I'm not saying to anyone else they can't say anything else. We're just saying to those people they can't say that in these places. And I believe that is a content-based restriction of speech.
So I think I brought this up last meeting, and I just want to understand what maybe you guys are hearing from your from our constituents about what they would like to see. Is it no more panhandling? Is that the goal here? Like, I think we have to. Is that what we're hearing?
I don't know that I could speak to what everybody's constituents think. But
Well, what are people, are anyone saying to you?
I'm
You don't
hearing-
want to see panhandling?
I'm hearing from people that come to me that they think a lot of the people that have come here, they came here because we're the only place that don't have a roof. If there's homeless people that are here, I think we all should be trying to reach out and try to help them any way we can help. Sticking $5 at the car window is not the only way you can help someone, you know. Most of the folks that have came to me are saying that they think we're right on track and we're doing the right thing.
With this ordinance, can I still panhandle in Sylva limits?
Yes, I mean, yeah, you can.
Yeah. And I can still ask for $5 out of a car window, correct? Someone can hand me $5 out of a car
You're
window.
standing, if you're standing somewhere, you're looking at me, you want me to talk, I'm assuming.
I'm sorry.
So if you're standing somewhere with a sign that says, not doing good, anything helps, God bless, those the kind of thing that those signs say, you're just standing on a sidewalk somewhere, that you can do that. You can do that. The only thing, my reading of the ordinance, and we did use asphalt as the base because that's what we were asked to do. But we took a lot of asphalt, it's a lot more restricted. They actually said like in these districts, you can't do it at all. Of course, we didn't.
We stopped in the village, I know.
Yeah, so we didn't do that. We just the things that you've all read them, just the things that are listed, these scenarios. But if you're just standing somewhere peacefully, holding a sign that says, I need money, whatever it says, no different than if you're holding, we've got businesses that hold signs, that pay people to hold signs, same. So it doesn't hurt.
Well,
This absolutely addresses.
Mayor Phillips, hold on one second. So if we had, for example, 20 panhandlers today and this ordinance passes, technically speaking, we could still have those same 20 panhandlers. This doesn't necessarily take them off the streets if they're not doing anything aggressive or in the wrong place.
I agree with that.
Okay, all right. And then I think I had one other thing to say. It's not really a question, but more of a caution to the board. I know that Mary said that this is something that we can edit and we can change. And one of the thoughts that comes to my mind a lot is that we need to make sure that we're not passing ordinances just for this board, for this police chief, for this town manager, and for the people that are here now. If we pass this ordinance and say Chief Hatton's not here tomorrow, and we get another officer, another chief in there, and he enforces this based on however he interprets it, do we end up sued because we're arresting people just simply because they're panhandling? Or I feel like it opens us up for a lot of issues. That's just my opinion. I think that we should look at this, not just what we see today, but the future as well, I don't want to pass an ordinance that could be misconstrued by future boards or by future police chiefs or their officers. And I just see this one as being one that could be, I guess any could be enforced incorrectly, but this just, I don't know. Yeah, sorry. You had something to say, sorry.
I was just gonna say that I think it addresses one thing that has been mentioned to me several times is people go to an ATM and they have someone walk up to them walking away from an ATM saying, I need $5. You can hardly lie to them, so you don't have it when you've got it in your hand. So it's an obvious fact of that.
So in that instance, I'd like to understand, so if I'm a panhandler and I approach you at the ATM and ask for $20, then what?
You mean, how do we respond? Is that what you're asking?
Does that person call the police and then you show up and I'm like, I don't.
Yeah, we've had that, like I said, I answered one call, like I told you guys about that before. The difference in, like, say, let's pretend that if this passes, okay? The difference is now, the guy that was standing there said, is this illegal? He asked me that question and I said, no, not. Okay, then I'm gonna stay here then. The difference would be, I would say, actually, there's an ordinance in town, you have to be 20 feet over here. You can't stand right beside where the people are putting their numbers in. You have to move over 20 feet. You can still stand there. You still ask for money. You just have to be 20 feet. That would be the difference. And remember, it's at this point anyway, it's a civil ordinance, so there is no arrest, like there's no. If anything, it would be an ordinance ticket, and I'll be honest with you, we don't. I wish I should have gotten this number for you, and I apologize that I don't have it, but we do not write very many ordinance tickets. If it's small, really small, and if you take parking ordinances out of it, it's almost a zero, if not zero. So we use those ordinances of like, hey, you can't do this, you need to move on. And as I said in our last meeting, our panhandlers generally are very quiet people for the most part. They'll do whatever we ask them to do. But we can't tell them, I can't say you need to move over here just because I want you to. I have to say there's a rule here and you can't be right here. You have to stand over. Does that answer? Your question?
Yeah, so I could still stand beside the ATM. I just can't ask that person for money.
Yeah, and you could be 20 feet and still ask for money. You just have to give space.
Can I sell them Girl Scout cookies at the ATM? Am I gonna get a civil ordinance ticket for that?
I would say you probably could.
But is that,
Could or
is that,
couldn't.
I'm saying you probably could sell Girl Scout cookies.
is that not, is that not solicitation? Or can I stand there and ask for donations for my church?
I'd have to look back at the ordinance to get down into that detail with you, but I mean, the difference is just how far away you are from the ATM. Are you saying could you set the table up right beside the ATM within, 10 feet, whatever?
If I'm standing right beside,
Could apply to it.
so even if I'm asking for money for my church or a cigarette,
You'd have to be.
that's still solicitation.
I'll look at, and maybe Eric is probably your best person to answer that, but I would say.
When you're selling cookies, you're selling product and you're not asking for something free. So I'd say the church and the person asking for money, I would say that they would have distance.
They would have to be farther away from the ATM.
Yeah, so I would say they'd have to be the 20 feet from the instant because they're asking for a direct solicitation where Girl Scout is selling a picture. I don't think that the Girl Scout would set up right there unless the bank allowed them, said, yeah, you can set up right there. It would be up to the bank, I think, at that point.
On a public sidewalk, it would be up to the bank?
I don't think.
That's what we're talking about here, is public property, that's one thing that I think gets confused in the discussion. None of this applies to private property because there's laws covering that already. If I own a bank, someone's doing something on my lot that I don't want them to do, whether there's an ordinance or not, essentially, I can call the police and say, I want this person removed from my property. Correct? That's private. So this is all only about public property and what you can and can't tell someone to do on public property. That's what we being asked to consider. I don't know, I mean, that still seems like content-based. I know it might be going in circles here, but that still sounds very much like content-based. We're saying you can't say these things within 20 feet of an ATM. But you can say these other things because by the ordinance, I could stand 6 inches from somebody at an ATM and say anything I want as long as I didn't say, can you spare any money? Right? I mean, that's what it says.
Well, in my
I'm not
notes,
trying to be humorous. That's literally what it said. You could only not say this.
I wanted to question 501c3s versus someone that doesn't, because Salvation Army, anyone sitting outside of the grocery store, any kind of Girl Scout cookies, I mean, that's all solicitation.
Grocery store's covered though. Just remember that. That's private property.
Get it, but on number 4, we're saying a commercial establishment.
Within 20 feet, yeah.
Business, and so those parking lots, their properties. It is a little.
Yeah, I mean, what I see is the public sidewalks. Some of those are within 20 feet of a business, and now we're saying, if you're standing within 20 feet of this business, I'm part of this, making sure I understand it. So anybody is that what we're saying? If you're within 20 feet of a business, I'm not saying what we're saying, what the ordinance says. You can say anything you want besides anybody's spare buck.
You can't say that you want them, and you can't say other things that would be criminal.
They're already covered by statute. As far as this ordinance goes, we're saying the one thing you can't say is perhaps money.
That's what this ordinance applies to. And you still have to factor in that everything takes human judgment. I mean, we have police officers, we're not going to society of RoboCop or AI police that are enforcing this ordinance. We have human beings that are interpreting the ordinance and applying it to this and making the best judgment call. And that's going to depend on, I was going to depend on the mannerism and the body behavior of the person. I mean, if the person is extremely aggressive, then even if he's not saying it, that's a scary thing for somebody. And the officers can say, what are you doing? I mean, that's their job. They're making judgment calls all the time, every day. And so I'm not I don't have a position on the ordinance at all. I'm just saying every ordinance in every situation is always going to take human judgment call because those are the people going to enforce laws, interpret laws, sit on a jury and sentence people based upon the behavior that was conducted that caused it. I mean, you can commit the same crime as somebody else and you maybe get a different prison sentence than somebody else based upon somebody else's judgment call as of that sentencing. And it's not going to be the same person that works. I mean, that's just the way laws work. It takes humans to enforce them and interpret them and apply them based upon the evidence that's presented to them.
I might add to that, the humans interpreting the best way to use this ordinance to make people's lives better here are the same people created an award-winning police department trying to help people less fortunate. So I think they've already given an example of what kind of people they are and what their goals are in trying to help people. And I'm very proud of our police.
At the end of the day, if we were to pass this tonight, is this going to be of your benefit in your toolbox or is it going to be a pain?
Yeah, so one thing I do feel like it's important to say is this ordinance will not apply to a lot of situations in our town. So what happens is generally, like I said, our panhandlers here are people who we see all the time and you see, that are panhandling. They're very mild mannered and very compliant people. What we do see though is people sort of that are they come into town and they're here for 3 days or 4 days. And then for you folks, that's when you get someone you've never seen that guy before. That's generally somebody that's only coming through town. And those people don't seem to have the same set of manners as the people that we see all the time. And maybe it's because they know they're only gonna be here for a couple of days. I don't know. I can't really speculate on it, but those people will knock on people, go up to the car, knock on windows sometimes. They'll go, the guy in the ATM, I haven't seen him since that day. But so like those people will go above and beyond. And that's whenever, for us, when we're dealing with when people call us and they're scared, they've been, whatever happened, shook them, they expect the police to have some sort of reaction to what just happened. And so for us, a lot of times it's college kids too. That's who a lot of times we get those calls from. But they say, this just really scared me. This happened, that happened. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And they expect us to have some sort of reaction to it. And so that's where we're not talking about a whole lot of calls per year. Our folks, like I said, the folks that are standing today, if there were panhandlers in town today, most likely the ordinance would not apply to them because they're not doing those things that are listed. They're just standing with a sign and that's it. So, but for those few situations that I'm talking about where we do have, somebody, my own opinion, but somebody that goes past free speech and they start infringing on other people's space and other people's rights, this helps address that. But again, keep in mind, it's a civil penalty, not a criminal penalty. So there is no possibility of an arrest with at where it's at now. And for us, it's used as a deterrent. We will say, like the guy says, is this illegal? We say, actually, yes, there's a rule here. You can't do this. You can do this, but you can't do that. Does that answer the question?
It does beg another one though. So we specifically speak about aggressive behavior in here, right? We're saying by accosting another or forcing them on accompanying another, which I believe are things that are pretty well covered by existing statutes and ordinances. Accosting another person, that I agree, completely subjective, but we do have ways to enforce that. If our concern is aggressive behavior, which is in here, then why would we go so far as to say that someone can't do it, period? Because some of these do say that. Like, I'm hearing you as a chief who I respect saying that's not really something that you're gonna go after, someone just standing there with, but this does in fact say they can't do that. If that's not our concern, why is it in the
You
ordinance?
could say the same thing about parking on Main Street in Sylva, because you're supposed to stay there 1 hour and leave. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be enforced at every time, but it is a tool in case they need it at a particular time. Right?
Yeah, and a lot of times there's situations where if there are some crimes, if they don't happen in our presence, we're not able to just charge somebody with that crime if we didn't see it. There's a group of crimes that are like that. And so people don't know that, and they don't know that those crimes. A lot of police officers have to go and look and is this one of the crimes I can make an arrest for if I didn't see it happen? So this could be one of those things where you have somebody report, hey, this guy just did that to me. We weren't there. We didn't see that happen. But this is the report that's happened. And so now if he's engaged in that behavior, we can say, listen, we've got an ordinance. You gotta move on. You can't be here. You gotta be 8 feet that way, or, whatever the particular situation. So, but I can tell you, and Natalie drives a great point, we work hard to treat people as good as we can treat them and still do our jobs. A different police chief, a different time could be different. That's a fine point to make for sure. But I can tell you with my leadership how we're going to do it. And we don't do with ordinances, it's an education thing almost always, even with parking. I got a lot of business owners that get frustrated because they want to see people get tickets. And so, no, when we met the person, we found out, yeah, they live upstairs above a business, but they just moved in. They don't know the ordinance. And so we tell them, and then we don't have that problem again. We don't have to give them. And so, the $50 ticket, it's a $50 ticket. So usually that's a little bit, it's kind of like don't do this again because you'll get another ticket, that kind of thing. We don't write, even with parking, we write very few tickets. We don't have to, because usually whenever we educate the people, they move on and, we get compliance. We don't need to do it. So. Did I say so?
Sure. I think I mentioned it before when we brought this up to begin with. And I don't think everybody's grasping the reality of what 107 is going to bring as far as the sidewalks and the people walking up and down. And this is a construction zone. This ordinance, the way I feel about it, protects, and I don't like the word panhandler either, but it protects those people as much as it does the citizens that's driving up and down the street, riding a skateboard, riding a bicycle or whatever. It's to protect everybody. It's not just to protect one or two. It's not to make Chief Hatton look good or anything like that. It's to protect everybody. It's all about safety. And, there's many subjects that you can throw into this, but basically, I think we all have a heart for homeless people, people in dire need. I think we all do. But the only other thing that I'd really like to say is I do have a problem comparing the Girl Scouts and the Salvation Army to panhandlers. It's not the same. Girl Scouts are raising money for a program. Salvation Army is raising money to help people like the homeless, to help people in dire need. I think we need to remember those two things.
The Sylva Fire Department used to do groups for fundraising. It was dangerous. I don't know why they stopped, but
I think someone got run over or got hit by a car.
It's a safety.
And when you've got people out in traffic like that, and I've seen it with my own eyes, people dart out in traffic, you wave a dollar. And it just don't happen here, it happens everywhere. That's all I got to say.
Am I comparing, I just wanted to make sure that everyone would be treated equally under this ordinance. That's the only reason I mentioned like Salvation Army and Girl Scouts and things like that. At the end of the day, an unhoused person, I'm not saying one is one thing or another, but sorry, Mr. Jones, I don't understand what the point of that was.
Well, I'm just saying, you can't compare because the Girl Scouts and the Salvation Army are doing things that churches and all these other groups are trying to do to help these people. And it's not fair to compare what they're doing out in front of a grocery store or anything else and complaining because the panhandler can't. They're actually out there working to get credits through school to help them, to help a kid develop a heart, to help a kid develop what it's like to see these people and to help with these programs. That's all. It's all about safety.
And we have unhoused children in our community as well. But the other part of that, this person who's asking for money may be trying to put food on their table and survive and get the things that they need to make it to the next day. I'm not seeing the point. I'm sorry. And the other part of this, I've heard from multiple people in our community, and I think it's a misunderstanding. When I hear people talk about it, they don't want to see unhoused people asking for money on the streets. And this ordinance does not address that. So I don't understand what we're accomplishing with this. If we need to address the instances that Pat is talking about, it seems like a lot of ordinance to address those few situations. Why are we not just pinpointing those situations and making an ordinance that pertains to those in some way and not this giant ordinance that honestly, it feels very much like an attack on unhoused people. And based on the way it's written, but more so based on the way this board has discussed this issue in this meeting and the past meeting that we had. We're gonna talk about people and say that they don't wanna work, and we're gonna talk about people and say that, you know, they're not allowed to ask for money to feed their families but the Girl Scouts can, I feel like it's not this. It's not this one. It's not the same people, but at the end of the day, I'm sorry, I can't vote for an ordinance that is based on hatred and disgust of people who are trying to make a living and live in this town. I have spent time with these people who are unhoused and panhandling, and what Chief Hatton says is correct. There are people that come through here and may cause issues in our town, but this is not the stuff that I'm hearing from our community about policing panhandlers has nothing to do. You told a story about an unhoused person knocking on your door, and then we talked about ordinance. That doesn't solve that.
I know that, and I said
But that was something you brought up during that conversation.
Well, I said that because it just seemed that we're having more folks here.
But this doesn't fix that.
No, okay.
This doesn't fix someone
I said that.
who's asking for money on Walmart's property, because that's private property. Okay, so if a Walmart wants to call the police and say this person is trespassing, okay, we've got that. This does not cover a lot of things, but the conversations that have been had around this in our meetings and what I've heard from people who don't like poor people asking for money, like I can't agree with it. It seems very targeted at people who don't have a place to sleep at night. Most of us in this room probably have a house to go home to tonight. Most of us probably have food that we can put on our table. I personally have slept on a couch before. I have hitchhiked before. I am really disgusted at the way we've discussed unhoused people in this community. And I can't vote for it. And I will not vote for it. If we had approached this in a different way and it had been about the behaviors and about solicitation and not just we don't want to see poor people, then you'd have me on board. But that's not what we're talking about here. And we can pretend like we're talking about something different, but we're not. And I've been guilty of judging people too. It comes from the fear. And like Destry said earlier, it comes from our realization that as a society, we're not doing right by people. If everybody in this room took a few minutes to talk to one of our unhoused people in this community, you would realize that our stereotyping of saying that these people are going out to buy alcohol or drugs, when in reality, they're trying to feed their families and stay alive for another day. Most of us in this room don't know that life. We get to sit high on our horse and make an ordinance that targets poor people. Again, if we're gonna make an ordinance that addresses the type of people that Chief Hatton is saying that may be a threat in our community and not somebody who just doesn't have a home, then again, I'm for that. I'm not for this though, and I'm sorry,
I wonder if, was Blitz, are you the one that brought this to the table? Did you make the motion to do this tonight?
Mark, I believe Mark made the motion.
Would you be amendable to pulling your motion so that we could have a conversation about this further to address some of the things that Natalie brought up this evening?
Well, I think we can sit and cherry pick this all day long.
We can.
And, you know, and at the end of the day, I just can't understand I really just can't understand why we can't agree on something that affects them as well as it affects us. It affects everybody, not just one or two people, not just someone that can't, put food on their table. It affects everybody, and you know, I'm as compassionate as anyone else. And I just can't understand why we can't come to an agreement that we're trying to help things.
Is there something you'd like to see stricken from the ordinance?
Well, I do feel that there's some triggered language maybe in there that maybe needs to be addressed or removed. Natalie or Brad, do you have any particular line items that you are adamantly opposed to seeing in this ordinance? I mean, I know it's on the agenda to vote for it as is, and maybe as is isn't.
I'm opposed to all the ones that say that someone can't do something that anybody else could do. And I think so telling someone that they can't do this one thing within 20 feet of a financial institution, I believe that that is a content-based restriction of freedom of speech. Telling them they can't do it within 10 feet of a bus stop or train station. We're not telling anyone else they can't say anything else within 10 feet of a bus station. Those I believe are unconstitutional. And if I went through there and carved out the ones that I believe it applies to, that would, in my opinion, be classified as restricting content of speech, which is a restriction of free speech. All that would be left would be the ones that are already covered by other ordinances, which I find, I didn't write it and I give credit to people that did, but the only ones that I feel are constitutional are the ones that we say, as said in this other ordinance. It's already covered. Because we say that we don't want to see menacing behavior, or as stated in this ordinance, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we don't want to see menacing behavior. As stated in this ordinance, you can't mislead someone by saying that you need money when you don't. As stated in this ordinance, you can't do it when you're intoxicated. All those things are already covered in other ordinances, which is why we're referencing other ordinances. But then we go on to say, specifically, you can't say these things. Not really, to put it in one phrase, you can't say that you need money in these locations. I believe that that is a content-based restriction of speech. I think you're telling someone they can't say this one thing. It doesn't say that you or I can't stand beside somebody in an ATM. In fact, it says we can't. We just couldn't say, I need some money. And I get the ATM one, like that was the one example that appealed to me in the beginning, but everything that I think we're saying we don't want someone to do to someone while they're at an ATM are referenced in the other ordinances. We don't want them to be menacing. We don't want them to be aggressive. We don't want them to be intoxicated. All those are already covered. So it just feels to me like we're saying to use specific people, or you just can't say this one thing. That's really what that's the only difference between this ordinance as I read it and existing ordinances, that you can't say this one thing. And to Natalie's point, that one thing is, I need money. And that just feels, I agree that it feels a bit inhumane, to echo some of what Natalie said. And just as importantly, I believe it's a violation of someone's free speech rights to tell them that they can't say that one thing. And courts have ruled that in my research, which is only a few weeks long, because this is not something I'd really latched on to before we brought it up. But quite a few courts have agreed with what I'm trying to get across here, no matter how well I'm doing it, that when you try to restrict the content of someone's speech, that does not hold up to constitutionality. I believe that's what this says. Can't say one thing. It's not like the crowd, the examples of things that you can say that aren't protected by fire speech, or by free speech, is, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That is considered a safety risk and menacing behavior. That's why you can say it. I don't believe that saying to another person that you need some money poses a safety risk or is a violation of someone else's rights. And I do believe that this ordinance says you can't do that. And I don't believe that Chief Haddon would go out tomorrow and start enforcing that meets my concerns. But I share Natalie's concerns, and that you do not put ordinances in place based on the good-hearted nature of your current chief of police. That's not how I would intend to operate from an ordinance standpoint, that we'll be okay because it's Chief Haddon. We'll be okay because they're allowed to call Page. I don't want to write laws then, because I don't think that's responsible. That's just my personal opinion. I can't count on the fact that Chief Haddon is going to be there to make this be enforced in the spirit of what we're saying, when it says it is in fact illegal behavior to do it. That's where I come out.
I want to make it very clear that I do have full trust in the Sylva Police Department, and I really appreciate the efforts that you guys have put forward, especially with the community care program. I think that's a great step in the right direction for the things that we can do and to help people who are needing resources and money and things like that. But quick question, I think, for you, Chief Haddon. Was this something that the Sylva Police Department asked for this ordinance? Is this a tool that you all came forth and said, we need this ordinance?
You know, it didn't come from the police department. I think it came really from the new, somebody tell me if I'm wrong. It seems like it came from the constituents of folks that were running for the board. Is that fair? I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it's not my place to say that, but like, it seems like that's where, newly elected people who said this is something that's important.
All of us during the campaign.
Right.
Local people just fed up with it. And
I will
the
say.
ladies are afraid to walk on Main Street. So they don't want to be approached by these people. There's ladies that are frightened.
Prior to this sitting board, I did have constituents come to me with this issue, which I brought in December of last year. They
Right.
reminded me. And I tried to find line items that fit the board and failed.
Well, there wasn't any line item that would fit,
And so this is rewritten, but it almost seems like it still needs some molding for it to be something that we could stand behind.
Yeah. So, well, the way I understand the actual ordinance, ours is a very, very mild dose of the actual ordinance, which had about 5 attorneys advising them on what to do. Theirs also makes the third offense a misdemeanor, which does criminalize poverty. I think what we're trying to do here with the tool to make our citizens feel a little bit safer, give our police at least the room to say, there's a rule that says, you need to go somewhere else to do this. I think it's about as mild as it can get, short of not having anything at all.
What is the behavior I don't want anybody to feel unsafe, that's for sure, but what is the behavior that's occurring? Did you get any feedback from constituents about?
Yeah.
Sounds like it's
ladies walking on Main Street that are having people that have been camping out on the back porch of now Haley Brewing, because they're shut down. And they're seeing them walk up the street and they're coming out and asking them for money. That's, and these ladies are trying to get their exercise in the mornings. They don't want to be approached by people who are afraid of it. And they have a right to live here too. Which, everybody has a right to live here. The people that have been here for many, many years, should they be afraid to walk down Main Street?
Well, no, I mean, seems like a trap of a question. I don't want them to be afraid, but if the person's not doing anything besides existing, or maybe saying to
There's a
you,
difference in existing and approaching ladies on the street by themselves.
you knocked on doors to campaign, did you know all of them?
Most of them.
Did you not know any of them?
There's a few I didn't know.
So in that example, if I'm jogging, if someone comes up to me and asks for money, then what? I call Chief Pat and say someone just asked me for money while I'm jogging and I feel unsafe.
If you're frightened, if you felt unsafe, yeah.
Then I call the police because I'm jogging and someone approached me and asked for money and I feel unsafe.
Actually not covered.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that example of what people are afraid of won't be covered by this. So this doesn't fix that problem.
Yeah, it don't
You
fix
still
that.
won't be able to jog.
We can't make an ordinance that fits every scenario anybody can come up.
But if that's one of the major concerns, it's not even fixing that one.
Actual listed off a great number of them. And a great number of roads and a great number of neighborhoods and places where it's just not allowed at all.
That's why I keep bringing up what is our goal here, because that is an example of what we want to fix.
Have a little rule in place for the police to be able to say you can't do that.
But the examples we're throwing out, they don't make sense. Like, you still, so I can still walk up to you and ask for money if you're jogging. So the people who unfortunately don't feel safe in our community jogging because someone may ask them for money, this doesn't solve that issue for those constituents. This isn't a solution to that. We're not bringing forth a solution for those people. So, and I think that's a shortfall. If we can't, if we're gonna do this, then find a solution, but this doesn't do that. Does that make sense? Like,
With the exception of the section where there's actual roads labeled in Buncombe County that say you can't go, and this is almost exactly like Buncombe County's. They've had this in place 6 months. Have they had any repercussions from this?
I'd seen it on the news for that.
Your knowledge?
No, I don't think that'd be the.
Wasn't there there was an article maybe 2 weeks ago about them going out and rounding up unhoused people? And so this was, I would think those things are related in some way or another. Maybe I can find the article. You guys, this was in Asheville, sorry.
For what it's worth, I don't think their ordinance is constitutional either.
I mean, they literally.
Arguably worse because it says you can't do it in very specific places, and I'm just not aware of that. I would be very surprised if that stood the test of
I
constitutionality.
don't know how many loggers the city of Asheville uses, but I believe they does.
They literally said you can't ask for money in the richest parts of town, basically.
I'm the only one on the Sylva town board though, so I'm gonna express my opinion, which is I don't think that's constitutional. It may be inconvenient and some people may not like it, but I don't think you can tell people that they can't say certain things in certain places if if it doesn't pose a safety risk. And we may never suffer any consequences of passing an unconstitutional ordinance. But my opinion is that it's unconstitutional. Because I don't think you can tell people that they can't say certain things in certain places if those things that they're saying don't pose a safety risk. As much as I don't want people to be uncomfortable jogging or any of the other examples that we've used, it doesn't mean that it should be illegal. I don't believe that you can tell someone you can't stand on a street and say, I would like money. I mean, I like to hear it and I like to jog by it. I just don't think that would stand the test of not prohibiting someone's free speech specifically based on content.
I don't want to drag this out, but I did find that article. And so I guess if we pass this ordinance tonight, then what are the next steps? And so here's what happened in Asheville. The Board of Commissioners basically approved funding for the sheriff's deputies to patrol downtown Asheville on Fridays and Saturdays. They approved those funds. And basically they went out and arrested they can go out and arrest homeless people. So is that our next step? We get Jackson County?
Is that an official document or a Facebook page?
No, this is Citizen Times. I would think they're a pretty reliable source of information.
Sure.
But if you need me to go do more research, I'm happy to bring that forward.
I don't think we can cherry pick this thing anymore with having it done. There's not much more can be weeded out of it without having an ordinance at all. We have a motion on the floor. We've had lots of discussion. It's time we just vote, and the passes are done. Mary?
And I do want to reiterate, I know you've heard this before, but we do have room to edit.
You want to edit it some more?
Not necessarily now, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean, if it passes or if it don't pass. The difference is if it passes and we want to make some changes, we can. If it fails, then we can't bring it up again for another year from the time you brought it up a year ago.
Exactly.
We do have the option to postpone this to a future meeting and not take a vote tonight. That's our other option.
As of right now, we have a motion on the floor. We won't proceed with that motion. We have a motion on the floor. That's for all board members voting in the affirmative to raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And all opposed by like sign. And the motion carries. Okay. So moving on. Next item on the agenda is Main Street lighting situation, and we have another presentation on the lighting.
Well, you just
I can
bring
put
it
it
up.
on.
Look at that last sheet that showed the actual cost comparison of the three options.
Last meeting, we had been given three options that we had to choose from. One was the lesser cost than the other two. The other two, there was very little difference in. Nicer light seemed to be what the discussion was leading to was that it was basically the consensus was that they liked the nicer light. I thought that waiting till the next board meeting to vote on it, would give us time for all of us to speak to our constituents and think about it. It's an expensive decision, but apparently it's one we have to make. And I would also say that I would think you'd want to consider it deeply. I know we need to find places to be a little more conservative and try to save money. But these choices in lights, we're stuck with for the next 50 years. And every bit of decoration in town is around these lights, the garland, the flags we hang from them for all the different times and events in Western Carolina and everything else. Everything our town does celebrates around these light poles. And I don't even have a vote. But it's my recommendation that we choose a nicer light.
I did have people reach out to me about light pollution aesthetics, about the decor we're trying to put out for the town of Sylva, our new bathrooms, the aesthetics that we're looking for that. Yes, it is gonna be more expensive, but over time, I think it is gonna make our town look better if we choose Monticello.
Monticello, I think, will have less upward light. The cheaper version, which I think was a concern of the people living in the upstairs apartments.
Yeah, the more expensive light, there's more light down and not up into the apartments that are on Main Street.
And also, I missed the last meeting, so a little bit of catch up here. Clarify, Jake, was second option that we seem to be leaning toward was one that had a top that had to be cleaned and maintained. That sounded like.
Yeah, so the three options that Ocala is very, very close to what's currently out there. There's no top light from casting up. It's just a resin globe, clear globe, like.
Those out.
Yeah, and it's gonna get dirty on the top.
Sure. Yeah, and they'll all get the same amount of dirt,
But
but
the light itself is gonna get dirty.
yeah, it'll be hidden a little bit better. That's the other option. That's the Mitchell top hat. And that's the Monticello there. Kind of a classic gas
I
light.
had a couple people ask me, my wife being one, about the actual bulbs. She was a couple people was concerned about that, about the warmth, the Kelvin rating. Do we know it? Do we have information on that? Or is that even part of this consideration, or we get to
We
pick
do.
up?
So Duke has very limited, that we currently have compressed sodium lights. It's a bulb and a bounce. Duke has gone completely to LEDs at this point. If they are offering, I can't remember the exact Kelvin rating, so you have to excuse me, but it's a softer LED light, a little bit more yellow. It's not that real harsh, bright, white, classic LED.
I don't know the specs either, but she was saying something like 3,000 Kelvin or lower, because that's getting into the warmer range versus the bright.
We asked them to give us the warmer lighting options.
Okay, good.
They've gotten a lot better over the last few years too.
And I believe that's what you stated when you presented the first time, was that this option you're looking at is a more yellowish, more homey looking light.
Sir, it's the most homey, comforting yellow light that is offered. It's gonna be more white, for lack of a better term, on what we currently have. But that's a function of it being an LED rather than a classic halogen light.
Jake, will we be able to order extra globes for the lights that suspends the red lights?
You talking about the ones on top of the mast arms?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Duke will handle all that. So Duke owns the poles, the mast arms, all that. They'll maintain everything.
Okay,
All we do
but
is
the
pay
poles
them.
won't come out, you're just changing the top.
Right, yeah, just a head change out.
So was I wrong in thinking the DOT owned the mass arms?
Did I say Duke?
Yeah.
I misspoke, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the LED lights last years and years and years, so you're not having to change bulbs out. So you'll last a long time before you see one actually go out.
Jake, in your conversations with them, is this a fixture that they're going to be able to get to replace one that gets run over?
Yes.
You need parts, they're going to have these ongoing for a long period of time.
That's what I've been assured by Duke.
The Monticello is about $9,000 more per year. than your current cost, but it's only,
Yeah,
$4,000 more than the cheapest cost.
right. The middle of the road's not much difference in it and the better one. So you either go with the cheap one or go ahead and get the nice one, because the middle of the road just about costs what the nicer one does anyway.
May I make a motion that we choose the Monticello?
Absolutely. We have a motion. Do we have any more discussion? Being no more discussion, all in favor would raise their hand and say aye. We have a unanimous vote for the nicer lights. Congratulations.
Finally.
Okay. So there is, the next thing on the agenda is a resolution of intent, schedule a public hearing to rename a portion of Municipal Drive. And this, to give everybody a 411 on this came to the town as a request from the Vance family. R.O. Vance's family, who was an icon in this town in most all of us' eyes. Fixed everything for everybody, whether they could afford to pay him or not. Served our fire department for many, many years. Just a fine, outstanding citizen in our community, and they'd like to see him honored in the way of changing this little section of road right here, Vance Street. And the only inconvenience it'll be to anybody is our own fire department changes their address.
You got one business. I think they indicated that.
It's on Allen Street. It's not on Municipal Drive. So we only have the fire department to change the address. It's the least impactful or least pain to anybody. And I think it's a very nice way to honor that family myself. So this is just a resolution of intent to schedule a public hearing for the renaming of that portion of Municipal Drive. It's from City Hall down to the fire. Would you like to make that motion?
I can make that motion. I do want to say that I tread lightly on this. Years back, there was a lot of free road naming for various reasons, and I just don't want to start something that could get out of hand.
Right.
I do recognize that this road impacts very few people. And he was a firefighter and he was an amazing citizen. And so, yes, I do want to make this motion, but I want to tread very carefully that this is not something that our town as a whole should
I totally
start
agree.
trending.
I totally agree. I totally agree. It's not, so if for somebody else that has as much impact on citizens in a nice way as R.O. Vance did comes along in the next 100 years, we'll maybe take a look at that. So we have a motion on the floor. Any more discussion? All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Got it.
Aye. All opposed by like sign, that's a unanimous vote. And the last thing on our agenda is to reschedule the March 28th, 2024 regular board meeting in March the 21st of 2024 at 9 a.m. I believe that's because it conflicts with the budget meeting. Is that correct?
It doesn't conflict, it puts them on the same day so that we can have a regular meeting at 9, by the meeting at 10, become one time.
I'll make the motion that we reschedule the March 28th, 2024 regular board meeting, March 21st, 2024 at 9 a.m.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed by like sign, and motion carries. And I would entertain a motion from somebody that we adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I do this. We stand adjourned.